Do you prefer a thin, wispy neck or a thick, meaty neck? Hello and welcome to the Highline Guitars Guitar Building YouTube channel. If you're new to this channel, at the end of this video, if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing, and at the very least, click that thumbs up button. That always helps. In today's video, I want to do what I have been doing in a few of my previous videos, in that I want to ask you, the viewer, a question about guitar building so that I can get all these different perspectives from different builders, from the really experienced luthiers to the weekend hobby builders. And today's question is, how thick do you like to make your guitar necks? This could also be a question that I would pose to a player. You know, how thick do you like your guitar necks? The trouble is, most players who aren't experienced at building don't really know how to answer that, because they don't take that measurement the way we as luthiers do, using our calipers and such. So they're likely to answer that question by saying as thin as possible, which can mean anything. So what I want to know from you is how thick you like to make your guitar necks. And this is a question that I would hope that when you answer it, you will do so by telling me what your measurement is, the thickness measurement at the 1st fret and then again at the 12th fret. Now, if you have a different way of doing it, by all means, post that down in the comments and include that explanation, because that's kind of how we learn, or how we modify our techniques, by learning what other folks do. And sometimes you'll read a technique and you'll think, wow, that's a really great idea. I'm going to apply that. I noticed in a video that I had posted about a week ago where I talked about the string spacing at the nut, one viewer had posted a technique using digital calipers, and how he uses the jaws of the calipers to serve as a fence for his nut slotting files. And I thought, wow, that's a really good idea. I'd never considered that. That's something I may have to try. So as you can see, if we all share our ideas and our thoughts on this, we can all learn from it. Anyways, back to the question. What is the thickness? And then maybe even mention why you make it that thick. I know that a lot of players who like really thin necks do so because they're, you know, shredders who like to play really fast, and they don't want a thick neck to impede the movement of their fretting hand. And then other folks like a bigger, thicker neck because they want that big, meaty neck to support their hand, their palm, as they're playing and bending and doing all sorts of things. And I know from talking with some guitar players, they like to have a thick neck because they believe that that thicker neck is going to have greater stability. And if they're really aggressive in how they press the strings to the frets, how they bend them and that sort of thing, or how they press their hand against the back of the neck, having that thicker neck makes it a little more stable and resistant to the effects of bending the neck and what that does to string tuning as they play. At any rate, I want to know what your thoughts are on the subject. Now, when I measure my neck, I'm only measuring the actual neck shaft as well as the fretboard. I don't have any frets installed yet, and I don't want to measure the thickness including the frets, because frets, you know, they can be different heights depending on the fret wire that you choose for that particular build. So having the frets in place can affect the measurement of the thickness and give you an inaccurate picture of what you're shooting for. So what I do is I measure at that 1st fret the thickness of the fretboard and the neck shaft minus the frets. And in this case, it's about 0.86 inches thick, which is 22 millimeters thick. And then for the 12th fret, the measurement is 0.96 inches, which is exactly 0.1 inch thicker than at the 1st fret. And that translates to a little over 24 millimeters. If you're enjoying this video, I would encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. That always helps this channel to grow. If you'd like to do a little bit more and help support the channel financially, you can click the thanks button down below and leave a tip in the amount that you want. Also, you can visit my merch shelf, which is displayed below the description, and purchase a t-shirt, plans for building a guitar, or plans for building the tools that we use to build guitars. Now back to the video. As you can see, looking at the neck, I'm not sure if you can actually see this on the video, but there's a taper. It's thicker at the heel than it is at the nut or at the first fret. What I typically do, or at least I start out this way when I'm designing a neck, is I take the taper of the fretboard edges and I'll take that bottom taper where it starts out low and ends up high, and I use that as my taper for the back of the neck. And if the numbers come out right, that's what I'll stick with. But I typically am shooting for that 0.85 to 0.87 at the first fret, and then 0.95 to 0.97 at the 12th fret. And the reason I go for that is because I find that to be a good middle ground when it comes to neck thickness. It's not too thick, but it's not too thin. As a player, I like to play a much thinner neck because, as you can see, I wasn't blessed with Jimi Hendrix-like tentacles for fingers. So I need a narrow, thin neck in order for me to play it comfortably. And that's what I enjoy. But when it comes to making thin necks, there's a couple of things that I've found you have to be aware of. First of all, the depth of your truss rod slot. If you're using a double action truss rod, there's a chance that it might be thick enough to where you have to make the neck thick in order to have enough wood at the bottom of that channel and the surface of the back of the neck. If it gets too thin when you adjust that truss rod, there's a possibility you could crack the wood. I'm not saying that always can happen. It seems to be more common with necks that are made from woods like mahogany or limba, which have less strength than, a nice piece of hard maple. But you have to be aware of that thickness of that wood at the bottom of the channel. And I get people asking me all the time about making necks thinner. Can they sand them thinner? Can they take a spoke shave to an existing neck? And I always tell them, oh, absolutely. But you got to know what the depth of that truss rod is. Otherwise, you could expose it. Or the first time you go to adjust the truss rod, which is going to be common with a thinner neck, because remember, when that neck gets really thin, the neck loses stability. So it's more susceptible to string tension, which can pull the neck into a bowing situation. And it may be too much for what your playing style is. So when you adjust the truss rod to try to control the amount of relief at the center of the neck, that force you're applying on the truss rod to the bottom of the channel could cause that wood to crack. So you really got to be aware of how thick the wood is in that area before you start cutting or sanding away any wood to make the neck thinner. So when you post your answer or your thoughts to this topic in the comment section below, tell us what thickness you're shooting for. And, like I said, I do it at the first fret and the 12th fret. But also tell us why. Are you making the guitar for yourself? Are you building guitars for customers? And what is your thought process as to why you make the neck that thick? I think that can help a lot of folks who are planning a build but aren't sure what thickness to go for or even why. And another thing I would like to know is if you have a completely different method for determining the thickness of your neck, include that as well. That's how we all learn, is when other folks have outside the box solutions to age-old problems. And it can also get us to think about new ways of doing things that ultimately can improve the end result, which moves the quality of our guitars to higher and higher levels. So I hope you found this video to be thought-provoking, interesting, and I'm hoping that you'll post your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below so that we can all join in the discussion and maybe learn a thing or two. So until the next episode, as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.